Welcome everyone to Paul Magazine's Literary Limelight. Today we are so very honored to have Danny Simmons with us. Danny is a true Renaissance man. He's an artist, writer, philanthropist, and founder of Rush Arts Gallery, first in New York City and now in Philadelphia. Danny Simmons is also the big brother of media mogul, the brilliant Russell Simmons. He is also big brother to hip-hop pioneer Joseph Simmons, who we also know and adore as Reverend Run Simmons, founder of the legendary Run DMC. Join us for this candid and beautifully authentic conversation.
There
I
you
can see
are.
you now. Okay,
Hi, brother. How are you?
good. How are you?
I'm well,
Well,
thank you.
we finally got
We
this together.
we finally got on, right? Thank you so much for joining us. This is actually our first format of interviewing for Paul. We're just I'm getting ready for the Paul Interactive website, so I thought I'd have some really fun live interviews on there. We'll always continue with the printed format, but thought that this would be a new way for people to engage in those. Yeah. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
Okay, I'm happy to be here. You did a wonderful job on the paper interview before in the magazine, so I'm sure this will be just as exciting and just as relevant. So I'm happy to be here with
Thank you so much for doing this a second time with us. Well, I'm going to go right into the interview because I know our time is a little bit limited
you.
here,
Okay.
but I wanted to. I've already done a wonderful introduction of you, so people will know where you come from a little bit. But I'm going to let you fill in all those blanks and so forth. So I just wanted to start off basically by asking a little bit about and of course I know these answers, but I want those who don't know these answers, a little bit about your earlier days in New York City with your brothers and how you began your journey as a visual artist while they continued to music.
Um, let's see. I mean, I don't know how far back you want me to go, but I've always been interested in art. My mother was an amateur painter. She would come home and set up a little tabletop easel and paint, and I'd watch her paint, and she would bring me home uh, paint supplies. And I started out like many kids drawing comic book figures and, um, just things around me.
Yeah.
But I had no plans on being a visual artist as a career. My career was I grew up in a very socially conscious house through my father. So my career was slated to be a social worker or somebody who ran social work organizations, and I wanted to be able to help people because I grew up in the civil rights movement, and my father at one point was a social worker, and he was very community minded, and he ran the night center, and he worked for the Board of Education as a attendance teacher. But most of all, he interacted with all the neighborhood kids and grown ups in a very helpful way. I saw my father and I joined him in many demonstrations as a kid. I saw him commandeer buses to the March on Washington, and all of that had a big influence on where I wanted me to go in life and what I wanted to do. And my father's had something he said to me and Russell at the time when we were kids. He said it because your parents are not well to do, but doing okay, it's incumbent upon you to give something back to the community, to our people. And he taught at night. He taught at Pace College African American history or Black history, and so he's always teaching his Black history. He was a poet, so he was always doing his poetry. So I was geared that way, but I painted a little bit. Mostly, I wanted to be a writer.
Yes.
But at one point, I working on my first novel, which was never published. It was called Nobody's Narrative in three parts. It was sort of a surrealistic existential novel. Um, I got writer's block, and so I went out and bought some paint supplies. And my thinking was, maybe if I do something else creative, I would get past the writer's block. And it did work, but I was so enthralled with painting that I just continued to paint. I didn't go to school for painting. I went to school for social work because that's exactly who I wanted to be. And at one point, I had sent my novel out. This is early on in my early 20s, and nobody really responded to it. And I said, I think if I can get somebody, it's easy to get people to look at stuff than to read stuff. So if I get some notoriety as an artist, maybe people will pay attention to my writing. And that's when I really delved into the early 80s. That's when I really delved into being a painter. And as I moved along, social work really didn't give me what I wanted as self-fulfillment. I saw myself being more maintenance on people than actually changing something. I worked for New York City, and I wasn't really changing anything. I made sure people got their checks. I made sure, their housing was intact, but they weren't, it wasn't progressing anything. And so, and at that time, Russell started, and I supported him a whole lot in his early days. Russell started Rush Productions and was, managing artists and giving parties and this and that. And I go to his parties. And then Joey became Run DMC. And I was looking at my little brothers doing all this great fun stuff. And I was participating. I was going to Joey's shows. I was going to Russell's thing. I was hanging around the office. And I said, man, I got to do something about me instead of the social work thing. And so I just quit my job. I went to my mother. I said, Mom, I'm really not fulfilled doing this. And she said, well, go ahead and quit your job. Nobody will let you starve.
Wow.
And so I
love hearing that.
that's like the best thing I was ever told. She said, nobody will let you starve. And so I jumped into being an artist. And I did it for a while. And then without telling the full story, I was using a lot of drugs, and I eventually went into recovery, and I had to figure out, and I wasn't working as a social worker anymore. And I was like, I'm going to start doing something back out in the street if I don't find something to do, something that's fulfilling. And so I started Rush. And I went to Rush. Well, first I started Sanctuary Gallery, and I had a brownstone in Bedford-Stuyvesant, put it out the ground floor and created my first art gallery. And I had given a few shows before then, but really had my own dedicated gallery called the Sanctuary Gallery. And it was a community gallery, and I started to meet people from the arts community. And eventually I went into a gallery named Annexed in Tribeca, and we did a lot of great shows and this, that, and the other.
Wow.
And then I said, let me start a nonprofit, because we weren't making any money. We were doing all kinds of stuff there. We had thousands of people coming because, we did hip hop shows where we did, the hip hop clothing line started. So we did fashion shows. Def Poetry came out of there. We filmed at Annex. We did all this great, great stuff that was all about the culture. And everybody came. I mean, everybody, all the supermodels and this and that. And a lot of it, was because at that time I was Russell's brother. And it was the place to hang out, and see celebrities.
I bet it was. I bet it was amazing. It was amazing.
We had a show named Sankofa.
It was all that.
Where the Fugees had their first. Well, I don't know if it was their first, but we premiered the Fugees there before they had a.
Oh my! What a history! My goodness.
So Sankofa had 10,000 people come to it. It was lined up in Soho around the block, and people coming and going. It was like 10,000 people came that night. No exaggeration, really. The line was all the way up Houston Street and around and back around. And we were letting people in 10 at a time, and 10 out, 10 could come in. It was real. And we had 100 artists. We had rented out 5,000 square feet. We had 100 artists. We had poets. We had all of that. And so Def Poetry came out of that too.
Oh, really?
The idea that I was going to produce poetry, because my dad was a poet. And so I was writing poetry. And so, I started getting more and more into my career. And then I engaged and started Rush. And when I started Rush, I really started engaging with other artists, and it pushed me to even get further. And this was in 1992 that I started Rush. And so, no, I started Rush. I'm sorry. In 1995, I started Rush. And we're getting ready to come into our 30th anniversary in 2025. And so I really got immersed into the art community, and I wanted to see myself become an artist also. And I figured I could juggle the gallery and juggle this and do it all. And then, that poetry got created out of the poetry shows. And we did the poetry
Oh,
shows and other shows so people would come, all types of people would come see the art. It was really a way to
oh,
get,
really clever way to bring it
yeah.
all together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And we named it
wonderful.
Rush because that was Russell's
Hmm.
nickname. And so, I played on his celebrity and run
Uh-huh.
celebrity to make
Yeah,
it
you
what
leveraged
it
everything.
became. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, I had it to leverage
you
and
had to
they learned.
leverage it.
And I'm a big
Absolutely.
brother. What could they do?
That's right. Even if they can't say, that's
They can't tell me no. They couldn't tell me no.
oh,
And so that's really how I got involved in really becoming a visual artist. But for up until very recently, and still, my career has been split between serving others with Rush, and and I wasn't a salaried employee at any. I was the
right.
chairman of the board, and
Hmm.
so I had to make sure, with a lot of help, that Rush stayed open.
Yes.
Because it was so important. We were launching careers with Geshi Mutu, Kehinde Wiley, all these young artists right now
I'm
that are really at the
yes.
top of their game,
Many,
really came
many
through Rush.
worldwide. Yeah, came
Yeah,
through
the
Rush.
worldwide
Yeah.
artists, they came through
Yeah,
Rush
I know
because
they
there was no
did.
place else. There
That's
was no
right.
place else for young
Mm-hmm.
Black artists.
Mm-hmm.
And Derek Adams, who I just read a wonderful article about today in the New York Times. Derek Adams was our curatorial director, and Derek knew all these young artists, and he brought them to Rush. And we did what we did. As I
It
moved along, I
worked.
started getting more shows and this, that, and the other, deaf poetry, and my name got out there.
Mm-hmm.
For both being an artist, being a poet, and being a person that promoted other artists. I don't know if I was ever considered a gallerist because,
Mm-hmm.
we were a nonprofit gallery, but I was considered somebody who gave great exposure to young artists. And not
Amazing
me, but Rush,
exposure to
the team of Rush, and we're still doing that now in Philadelphia. The team of Rush, their whole job was to promote young artists or promote artists who needed the exposure. We older artists also. It doesn't have to necessarily. It was mostly
right,
young
right,
artists,
right, right,
but
right.
older
For
artists
all
too that
ages.
yeah could use exposure, and mostly people from the Black community, but not exclusively.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are many artists, white artists who've come to Rush who've gotten a bump from being involved with Rush, and so
Mm.
I wanted to make sure, and we leaned heavily into promoting women artists because women artists had the same barriers put before them as, at least at that time, and as artists of color. So it's really women artists and artists of color, and then everybody else could join in too.
Yes, yes. Well, what put your eye on Philadelphia?
Oh, well, Philadelphia came to me through my buddy Raphael Tiberino, who I met while he was living in New York. And I used to come and visit Raphael, and Raphael would have shows at the Tiberino Family Gallery. And so I got to know Philadelphia a little bit through that. And then Raphael had this great show called The Unflinching Eye, Raphael and Family. I'm sorry, it's not just Raphael,
Yes,
Tiberino
magnificent
Family.
art. They're the
Yeah,
royal
Tiberino. Mm-hmm.
family of artists here in Philadelphia.
Oh yeah, they're the first art family of Philly, as they've been called
Yes,
many times.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I come up with shows, but then they had this show at the African American Museum called The Unflinching Eye, the Tiberino Family and Friends,
Mm.
and I had a big painting in that show, and the curator of that show, a woman named Leslie Guy, asked me would I like to have a solo show, and
Okay.
that was in 2015. And I had this huge solo show of myself and my work and my collection, and it was a mixture of all that. And from that, I was coming back and forth to Philly, and I was looking at the real estate, and Brooklyn was changing so much, and I love Brooklyn. Brooklyn was changing, but I was on one of the other thing was I was on 5 different boards of directors at the same time, and that wasn't the height of my public service. So it was
Mm.
rushed 5 different boards, including the Brooklyn Bridge Park, Brooklyn Museum, Brooklyn Academy of Music, Brooklyn Philharmonic, and I was just doing too much. I didn't have any time, and I said
A
the
lot.
only way I'm going to be able to escape this public service is by 2 things. I got to move.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta
Okay.
move.
I see.
And so I said, if I'm going to move, one of the things that always I wanted to do was expand Rush beyond New York City.
Mm-hmm.
And so, when I sold my house, I bought where I'm living now. And then I bought the gallery building over in Logan. And so, instead of retiring and just being an artist, I ended up creating another thing for me to do.
Whole nother thing. Oh, wow.
A whole other thing for me to do. And so, I ended up running Rush. And then eventually, what really happened in 2017 when Russell was accused of sexual assault, all of our board members, not all, but most of our board members, all of our endorsements, all the stuff, we were a $2 million a year um, organization through, grants and through sponsorships and this, that, and the other individual donors dried up.
Yeah.
And it was nothing. And I was like, damn.
Mm.
And I decided instead, everybody told me I should close, or then so one of our board members, well, change the name. And I said, I'm not changing the name of the organization. And so
No.
I decided, since I bought the building, I had decided to just keep going. And so that was 2017, and now we're at 2024, 25. And so we've largely been running on donations from the art community.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, individual donations of mine. I sold all parts of my collection to Fund Rush. Other people have generously donated, like our boy Letty Bazemore. A lot of people believed in Rush and didn't see, like other organizations at the time. Russell had resigned, and he got into his yoga thing, and eventually nothing really came of those accusations except for he was accused. But it destroyed Rush's outreach. And so, but I decided I was going to keep it going. And so for the last 8 years, we have been going on donations from, like we just had a big fundraiser with Swan with about 50 artists donated, and we raised enough to keep going for another year. So we are sponsored by us,
Yes.
by
Well, I
the
could tell.
art community, and by people who believe in what we're doing.
And
And
we
what
don't
we're
want anything to happen to Rush. Ever since you've been here, like you've been such a major inspiration for us all. Like we really look up to you as a mentor, and
oh,
we really, really, yeah, and we're always talking about you and kind of like, following and trying to be like you in many ways. But we really look up to you, brother, and we just thank you so much for all the support you've offered us artists here in Philadelphia. So we don't want anything to happen. We want you to be right here.
and I'm so proud to be here. And in the neighborhood that I'm in, there was
Yeah.
no arts organizations for
No,
miles around. And
that's
so we put something, and everybody said, it's not going to work over there. Nobody's going to come over there. And people come, and
they
people still
come.
come.
That's right.
Yeah, and
That's
we've
right.
had wonderful, wonderful shows. We've launched. We can continue to launch careers out of our place in Logan, and we have two galleries: one for solo shows and one for a larger group shows. And we still teach kids every on the Saturdays. We're on hiatus right now because it's the
Mhm.
summer. I
Sure.
mean, we during the pandemic, we started teaching. Not only we stopped teaching in class, but started teaching online, and then we taught kids in Jamaica because we
Hmm.
sent Zoom, and
That's
we did
amazing.
shows of kids in Jamaica, West Indies. So we sent art supplies over there, and with the money that artists and individuals have donated to keep Rush going, we've been able to serve our children, and we've been able to serve our artists. So we're doing okay.
You're
We're
doing
hanging in there.
absolutely. I just wanted to circle back to the neighborhood. I'm so proud of you guys for picking that neighborhood. But is there, I mean, you did have a reason for that, right? I think you were basically starting to talk about that, but just a little bit more about that.
Well, it harkens back to when I started my second gallery in New York, Corridor Gallery. It was a neighbor. I believe that arts should be in neighborhoods, not just in museums and downtown. I think every neighborhood should
Mhm.
have a gallery, and so the people in that neighborhood can get to know the arts, and the arts know the people and uplift each other. And so, which is one of the things I love about Philly. I love the work that Mural Arts does, because they're everywhere and people are able to see art everywhere. And so I believed in finding some place where art ate. We put art where art ate.
There you
And,
go. There you go.
and so Rush being in that neighborhood, also it was, I was riding, it wasn't particularly that neighborhood, but
Hmm.
it was North Philly neighborhood, Manayunk, not Manayunk, um, up there by the museum, by the zoo. What's the name of that neighborhood? I
Mantua?
can't think.
Mantua?
Mantua.
Hmm.
Yes, that's it. I'm sorry.
Hmm. Hmm.
I looked over there. I looked in places where there's not traditionally galleries to put. And I happened to be driving down Old York Road and saw this building with a big for sale sign on it. And I said,
Wow. Wow.
that's the building.
Hmm.
That is the
That was
building.
it. Wow.
And it was two stores. And then upstairs, there are two apartments that help pay for the upkeep and the management of the building. And so, that's also my donation to Rush and the cause is that, all the money that comes from that building basically pays to keep that building running.
That's
Um, I guess if I ever sell it, then I'll get whatever real estate bump. But right now, I
yeah.
ain't making no money.
There you go. So, brother, how do you manage all of this with? Oh gosh, you're an artist yourself. I mean, I went to your show last year in New York City, and I've seen your work on, in pages of books and online and so forth. But I tell you, when I got to see your work in person, man, when something brings tears to my eyes,
Oh, stop that.
you make it move. Yes, it did. It's brought up it just welled up something in me, and I just was blown away. But I wanted to ask you, how are you able to sort of balance everything that you're doing in the community and with Rush, along with your own work as a painter and also as a writer? So
Well,
just want to get
I
an idea.
honestly don't think there's any formula for that. Things come up and then you deal with them and then you move on to the next thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I get up in the morning and I not every morning, but most mornings, and I go into my studio, which is in my house, and I do some painting, and then I check my phone to see if I got to do something else and go
Mm-hmm.
back to painting. And so I mean, it's a balancing act, yeah. But life will dictate what you do next. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna devote 5 hours here, 5 hours there. Life will dictate what you're gonna do next, and I've been doing that for a long time, living that way. It's like, okay, I do what's in front of my face,
There you
and
go.
a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times, and frankly, being in Philadelphia has given me a lot more time for
Mm-hmm.
my artwork. I am on the board of Mural Arts, but I'm not extremely active board member. I mean, I do what I can to help them with situations that I can. I did a deaf poetry for them to raise money and a couple of things like that. But I'm committed more to my personal career right now than I've ever been in my art career. And at 71, I think if I don't get more involved in my own art career now, there will never be another. It won't be that much more time to do it. So
Oh,
mm,
I
I'm,
understand.
I'm spending a lot more time and intend to spend a lot more time involved in doing my own work. But I'm also producing a segment of poetry shows called Wordsmith, and I just did one at we still use the term Deaf Poetry Jam
Mm-hmm.
reunion, but it's really now called Wordsmith because we have poets and projected art and music, and it's all like one amalgam. And I just did one at Grounds for Sculpture to honor Roberto Lugo. And so
Amazing
that
sculptor.
it was outdoor on the lawn, and he has a huge sculptural vessel, and the poets were standing inside the sculpture doing poetry. We had a DJ, and
Wow. Wow.
several hundred people came, and Jamaluddin Takuma was there playing, and so we did that, and then last year at Greenwood Cemetery in Brooklyn, where John Michel Basquiat laid to rest, we did a memorial dead wordsmith for Basquiat in the cemetery
Oh man, that
where
must.
he and the cemetery was packed, and it was wonderful, wonderful. We had bands with poets with bands. We had 5 women called Five String Diva who played string instruments, and they performed in Shrine for the Black Madonna, Black Rock Band, and all these amazing, amazing people and amazing, amazing poets. And we have 6 artists projected behind them. on a starry night in the
Oh,
cemetery.
really? Oh, wow. Rush is on the move, boy. I tell you, you are on the move, all of you. I'm so proud of you. Wow. And I wanted to just circle back a little bit to we were talking about writing a little bit, but also books and what impact may have books or any particular book or something you've read that sort of impacted your life in some way
Oh God.
or your
Well,
creative journey even.
the you know, I think that the work that most impacted my creative journey. There have been a lot of books that impacted my thinking, and like Ulysses, but and another bunch of existentialism. But the book itself that impacted how I approach art and poetry is the Freelance Paulbearers by Ishmael Reed, and I read that in college.
Mm.
I wrote papers on it, and I've curated stuff with Ishmael Reed. But I am just so enamored with the way Ishmael Reed handles words and sentence structure and the abstractness of how he gets his ideas across. That has had a huge influence. That book and all of his books really have had a huge influence on my book. We are now putting together a wordsmith to try to travel as a tour honoring Ishmael Reed.
Oh,
Uh,
really?
yeah, so and I'm talking to Grounds for Sculpture about that, and I've done stuff at the August Wilson Center in Pittsburgh, and so I've
Hmm.
partnered with them before, and so I'm looking to partner with them again. Different Houston Museum of African American Culture, they've all shown interest in taking this tour, and Ishmael's going to show up at a couple of places,
Oh, wow.
and
To be a tour.
yeah, it's going to be a tour, but it's going to be different people from different cities. I mean, the core of it will be the same, but if if we're in Pittsburgh at the August Wilson, we're going to have Pittsburgh musicians, a couple of Pittsburgh poets. If we're in Houston, the same thing. If we're here at the Grounds for Sculpture, um, a couple of other things. So
That's so exciting. Oh my goodness. There's so much more to do. Wow, brother. So Ishmael. Anything else I'd like to, I just don't want to miss anything in terms of making sure that we,
um,
yeah,
well, I can talk
covered
about what's coming
Rush.
up.
Yes, that's what I wanted to hear. So what's coming up for you guys in terms of the arts or events or whatever,
Well,
classes, whatever.
Well, I told you there's two different projections Rush and me. With me, October 17th, I'm having a solo exhibition at the Reginald F. Lewis Museum in Baltimore. So that's a big solo exhibition
Oh,
of
wow.
my work.
Mm.
I am also right now at the John Lewis at Morgan State in a group show. I am working on, like I said, I'm also working on that Ishmael Reed tour. I have a project with New York City where I'm doing a 190-foot mural of
Mm.
my work, 12 feet high and 190 feet long. I can't talk about it too
Really?
much, but
Okay,
it's
okay.
so I've been sworn to secrecy until they release it. But
Right.
I created
Understand.
the artwork for it, and it's going to be transfixed on glass, and then put up over a building. It's going to be super amazing. And I did like a long 35-foot, but I guess it would be study for this, and so that's coming up. So that would Rush.
That's
Uh,
exciting. Wow.
there's a few things, and I'm also uh, working on my novel becoming an animated TV show with talking with Netflix. And we've
Ooh,
had
I
a
love
couple of
that.
talks
I
about it.
love animation, so I love
Yeah,
that.
so we're gonna have that. My novel 3 Days as the Crow Flies about the '80s in
Yes.
Lower East Side, and Basquiat, and Run DMC. All of those people are
Oh, really?
in this
That
story.
sounds
So,
good.
we have a script, and we have a playbook, and
Mm.
we're having meetings, and hopefully that'll happen. It's
Yay,
always
I
a
hope
shot,
so.
always a shot.
Oh my
With Rush,
goodness.
We are starting to right after the holiday. We're going to begin planning our 30th anniversary, 6 months of stuff. So look out for that. We're not sure
Okay.
what we're going to do, but starting January to June of 2025, we're going to have celebratory things
Right.
going on.
Because this is the 30th year,
Poetry.
right?
Yeah, it's the
30th.
30th year of
Oh yeah. Oh, you got a party
poetry,
for
art show,
that.
a party, a dance
Yeah,
party,
gotta
all
have
these
all
things.
kind of parties for that.
All these things are running around in my head, and the people who help me plan this. So, right after the holiday this weekend, we're going to jump deep into that. So,
Oh,
and I'm going to be fundraising I'm going to be out here begging for money again from the arts community to help fund that. So
absolutely. Absolutely,
that's
brother.
where I'm
Whatever
at
we
right
can do to support it, we're here.
now. Swan Galleries had that auction, and we
Yeah.
raised that money,
Yeah.
but that's operating money. That's not for a party. So, we can't spend that. We need to keep the doors open.
Yeah,
A party.
absolutely. Gotta pay
Well,
the overhead.
we're gonna have this party, so we'll figure it out. We'll figure
Okay.
it out.
Well, any way that we can help, let us, always call out, give a call out, shout out. Okay.
I will.
All
Is
right.
there, is there anything else?
No, this is it, brother. I thank you so much for joining
Well,
us today. And this was so informative and fantastic. And it was just so great to interview you in this format. So this was wonderful.
this is fun.
Thank you
I hope I didn't
so.
run my mouth too much.
No, you were great. You answered 2 and 3 questions in one, which was awesome.
What I mean about running my mouth, I
No,
just
that's
kept
not.
talking.
No, I didn't mean. No, it was fantastic. I want it to be like a conversation. I want it to be very natural when we do talk this way. So,
I always feel at ease talking with you, Sheila. So
oh, thank
it,
you
it was
so much.
it was a good conversation.
Oh, brother,
While we were
thank
talking
you.
about 9 emails and texts flashed across my screen, I kept on
I
like,
know.
oh God, my God. I need to figure out how to turn off notifications while I'm doing these things.
I know. I know
Anyway,
you're busy. Everybody's calling on you, so I'm going to let you go because I know you
nobody's
have a
called
lot to
all
do.
morning. Nobody's
Oh,
called all morning. As
they waited
soon
till
as I get
now.
on this thing, everything's happening.
Of
Here's
course,
what I
of
do.
course, of course.
All
That's how
right,
it
now.
always goes. All right, dear.
I
Love you.
can't
Take
wait to
care.
see you.
Okay. I look forward
All
to
right,
seeing
now.
you soon. All right, now. Bye bye. Thank you.
Bye.